situation. So as I say, welcome to this event. I'd like to introduce you to Sanjay. He should be coming on very shortly. And there he is. So I first met Sanjay about 10 years ago through Simon, obviously at GreenStones. Good morning, Sanjay.
Morning.
Good, we can hear you as well.
That was time. The doorbell's just gone.
Oh, is it? Okay, well, you can go and get that if you like. Obviously, modern technology and changes, we're used to this. We're not quite the BBC with having the kids being dragged out of the room, but I first met Sanjay about 10 years ago through Simon, and I saw certainly some changes in Simon that when he started working with Sanjay. I think it's fair to say I was sceptical of the woo-woo stuff that I now understand a little bit more. I worked one-to-one with Sanjay, and I've also been on 2 3-day retreats with Sanjay where it got me doing lots of different things. It's helped me through some difficult periods, and some of the tools and learnings that I've gained through Sanjay is certainly being used at the moment to help me through. So the plan of action for today is that Sanjay will go through a few of the things. We've got lots of questions. If you have any questions that come up, if you can make sure you put them in the Q&A, that makes it easier for me to see which are the questions and which are the sort of just the comments. If you've got any comments to make, or I'm sure you'll be thanking Sanjay at the end for a wonderful session, you can put that in the chat. But as I say, any questions, put them in the Q&A. We've got all the questions that you filled out on the registration, so we've got those to go through as well. But if anything else comes up, if you don't understand something that Sanjay said, please feel free to add them in. We'll go through them all, and if we've got any time left at the end, we'll make sure that we answer all the questions that were posted up. But more importantly, your guys' questions on the Q&A, because you've made the time to come on, we want to make sure we get those answered. So I guess without further ado, I'll hand over to Sanjay.
Hi, Mark. Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm a speaker for my sins, and every time I get introduced, the first thought that occurs to me, and excuse the language, is, what do I say now? So I do get nervous. So that's to let you know that what I do really works, but that doesn't stop me getting nervous or anybody else getting nervous. So things happen in life and we have to cope with them. Coronavirus has happened and we have to cope with it, whether we like it or not. And it doesn't matter how prepared we are for it. It doesn't matter how prepared we are for people that we know to get coronavirus, in some cases actually die. We have to be able to deal with it. And the beauty of what I do is it enables me to face life and to deal with the stuff that I've got to deal with. My background is I'm known as an emotional intelligence coach, and when I first started, nobody even knew what the term meant, whereas now everybody is talking about emotions for the first time. And what I teach, it goes beyond talking, and I'm not talking about sitting on a couch as in a therapeutic situation and bawling your eyes out. I'm talking about being able to use a tool which nobody actually knows you're using. So you may be in the middle of a meeting or a presentation like this, but nobody can see that I'm using the tools, and nobody can see that you're using the tools. And that's the power of what I teach. It enables you to bring out the very best in yourself at times during which you might not feel like the best, but still be able to do a great job and to help the people around you. So I'm going to do a short presentation, and I'm not here to convince anybody, because if I convince you, then I've got to keep convincing you. I'm just going to share the information with you so that you have an idea of what it is, and then do what you need to do to convince yourself. And what I'd suggest is ask the questions. I'll answer as many as I can today, but more than that is arrange to speak with me, and let's just have a chat, over a virtual coffee or whatever, and make sure that you know what this is about and how it can help you. Because I worked with many businesses over the last 21 years that I've been in business, and I work generally with the leaders of the business. So I know that those businesses that I worked with have benefited from it. So I know it works in business, as I know it works in personal life. So without further ado, let me just share the information, and then Mark, we can take some questions, and hopefully you'll get them answered over the next hour.
We sure can. And I guess the biggest advantage you've got is the first time we did a one-to-one coach and I wanted to punch you. So at least you don't have that threat on the...
I'm kind of used to that. And I deal with emotions, and sometimes people get angry with me, which is understandable, because I guess I can be quite annoying at times. So let me just share the screen and let me know whether or not you can see my screen. So you should be able to see the...
Yeah, we can. We got that.
Okay, there you go. That's me. That's some of the details around me, and you can get these from Mark later on, or he'll send them to you. Well, first of all, let me just highlight when I do these presentations, there are some people who at the end will say, what the hell was all of that about? And some people will go, that really resonated with me. I don't know whether you're going to love me, and I don't know whether you're going to hate me, but whatever it is, I am a bit like Marmite, and I've got used to it. Have your own experience, but I also know lots of people who initially hated me, or like Mark, wanted to punch my lights out, but then they actually applied what I taught and realized that there is something here. So I'm like Marmite. I don't know whether you like it or not, but there you go. That's life. Thoughts become things. That's the very basics of a lot of training around developing yourself. Whatever you think about constantly becomes your reality, because you start to act subconsciously in a way in which those things come into your life. And usually when I ask, yeah, thoughts become things, but what has to happen in between thoughts becoming things? And you know, it's not a case of you just sit here and think a good thought and it appears and materializes in front of you. So what is it that needs to happen? And most people go, action. You got to take action. And I agree. So thoughts lead to the actions you take, which lead to the results. So what are the thoughts that you have about your business? Generally, before coronavirus came around, what are the thoughts that you had? And off the back of those thoughts, what sort of actions do you take, and what sort of results did you get? And now that coronavirus is here, what are your thoughts about your business? And as a result of those thoughts, what sort of actions are you taking to get the results? Because if it was as easy as think the right thought, take the right action, get the right result, then that's not what happened for me. I was an abject failure at that, because I was thinking the right thoughts. I'd done a lot of personal development training in my time, and I knew I was good at thinking the right thoughts. And I was good at taking the right actions, because I'd also paid a lot of money to get the right coaches to coach me in my business. But the right thoughts and the right actions only led to a business that had to be liquidated in the end. So right thoughts, right actions didn't really work for me. And have you experienced that you're doing the right thinking, you're taking all the actions you're supposed to take, but you're still not getting the results that you deserve for the actions that you take, for the effort that you put into the business? And I realized that I needed to really find out what was going on. And over a number of years, I finally got to the bottom of what it was, that thoughts to actions to results wasn't enough. There was a missing link. And I discovered that the missing link was emotion, because every thought that we have makes you feel a certain way. And the way you feel dictates the quality of the action that you take. So if you're feeling good, the action that you take will produce a very different result to if you're feeling pretty dismal, because the very same action will create a different result. And I don't know if you can hear the sound in the background, but I think that's the lawnmower outside, so bear with me on that, typical on that. So you might hear it coming and going. So this is where I start to apply the emotional intelligence. So what's the problem with thoughts? Well, we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts every single day. And the sad fact is 80% of the thoughts that you're having today are the same as the ones you had yesterday. And 80% of the ones you had yesterday are the same as the ones you had before then. So all of those thoughts are creating a set of habits in you. but you don't even know what those habits are. And you can't process 60 to 80,000 thoughts. In the last 10 minutes or so, you had about 400 thoughts. How many of those do you remember? The chances are very few, because like an iceberg, most of the thinking that we do is below the surface of our consciousness. And it wasn't the bit of the iceberg that they could see that sank the Titanic. It was the bit that they couldn't see. It's not the bit of the iceberg, the problem that you think you might have that is impacting your business. It's what you don't know is that's below the surface. And if you don't find out, if you don't deal with it, it's going to sink your ship. So if we have 60,000 thoughts a day and we're only aware of 6,000 of them, you can be an amazing positive thinker, but you've got 54,000 thoughts below the surface of your awareness, and you only need 6,001 to be negative. And before you know it, you're producing results that you don't really want. So what are you aware of? What are you not aware of? What's the advantage of emotions compared to thoughts? Well, emotions work in a very different way to thoughts. We don't have 60 to 80,000 emotions a day. We don't even have a few hundred emotions a day. It's very few. And those very few emotions can be boiled down into an even smaller category, into 9 categories, actually. These are the categories that I teach people. And you don't need to remember this, so don't worry about the names, but there are 6 categories that are in red and 3 categories that are in green, and I'll speak a bit more about the difference between them in a moment. The ones in red are what we generally regard as negative. The ones in green are what we generally regard as positive. You may not be familiar with these names. It doesn't really matter about the names. So all you've got to remember is there are emotions that are below that red line and emotions which are above that red line. And I like simplicity. So when I came across this, I find it difficult to remember all these names. And then somebody said, well, why don't you just remember the first letters, CAP and ACFLAP? And yeah, that was easier. But ACFLAP is a bit of a mouthful, and I like simplicity. So I really made it simple for you. All you need to remember, instead of CAP and ACFLAP and the line, is CAP and crap. Above the line, you're in CAP. Below the line, you're in crap emotions. Emotions which are stopping you from being the very best of yourself. And the red line is the resistance line, as I call it. So when you're above the line, you're feeling emotions which will allow you to take the actions that you take in a much better way, produce the results that you get in a much better way. When you're below the line, those very same actions which we take will be taken in a way in which the results aren't really in line with the amount of effort you put in. So above the line, it takes less effort. Below the line, it takes more effort. Let me put it another way. If you're going on a journey, you get in the car nowadays and you program the sat-nav. How you program the sat-nav makes a massive difference. So, for example, if you put in the code SG14-1LH, it'll take you to one destination. But if the programming that you do is SG14-1LJ by mistake, you'll end up in a very different place, a different street or a different house. So you need to be accurate. So you need to set your goals very precisely. But that's not all there is, because once you get moving, what happens? So now you're moving, which gear are you going to drive in? Are you going to drive to your destination in reverse, or first, second, third, fourth, or fifth? Well, you could get there in reverse, but it's not going to be easy. And you could get there in first or second or third, but you're going to burn a lot of fuel and you're not going to go very fast. So the higher the gear that you drive in, the less fuel you burn, i.e. the less effort it takes. And the higher the gear that you drive in, the quicker you can get to your destination. And these are the gears of related to emotions. Which gear do you tend to drive in? There are people that are fearful, especially right now. They're driving in fear. Well, you're driving in first gear. What's the difference between the gears? Well, apathy is that place where you can't be bothered. What's the point? There's no point in doing this. You're apathetic. Grief is the energy of loss. It's better than apathy, because in grief there's a sense of, I don't know what to do, but somebody else does know, and I can at least try and find out. So grief is the energy of loss, but it has more movement than apathy. Fear has more movement than grief, because in fear there's fight or there's flight, or there's freeze, which is the lack of movement. So fight and flight is movement, freeze doesn't have any movement. Lust is the energy of desire. It's the not just the sexual lust, it's the energy of wanting something. Do you want your goal big, do you want it so much that you're willing to get off your butt and do something about it? That's the energy of lust. So you get off your butt and you take action. You might even take massive action, but because you're in a low energy, you don't get the results that you think you should get. What comes up? You get frustrated, you get angry. And so you work harder. And anger is like a shotgun blast compared to a laser. So you blast off this anger, and most of the energy of anger is wasted, because a laser is far more powerful than anger, than a shotgun blast rather. So just through sheer bloody hard work, you start to get the result. You start to get somewhere, and then pride comes up. And I'm not talking about the pride of a job well done. I'm talking of the pride that says, oh, I'm better than other people. And if they only got off their butt and did something, they'd get the results as well. So it's that sort of pride where you look down at somebody. So pride is still a negative energy. And if I'm honest, when I first started working with it, I don't think you'll mind me saying, but Simon was stuck in pride. And it wasn't the kind of pride of really looking down on people. It was the pride of, I'm really good at this, and I'm good at this because I've done the hard work. But that limited his success. And working with me, he learned to move up to courage. So the same actions, the very actions he was taking, which led to a lot of hard work, to some results, but not of the quality that he wanted. From courage, he had a lot more energy going into the very same actions, and he started to get the results that he wanted. Courage is that place where you're willing to take a step forward, even though you don't know where you're going to end up. Right now, wherever you are with what's happening, and for most of us, we're stuck at home. You need to be encouraged, and you need to take that step forward into something that is completely unknown, because if you don't take that step, it could sink your business. It probably will sink your business. If you do take that step, you may sink your business, but it's better to have some hope than no hope at all. Acceptance is the energy of, okay, this is the situation. I may not like it, but this is the situation. And you stop fighting, you stop wasting energy in the fight. And all the energy that you have is then there to take action towards your goal. And peace is a state which is very difficult to describe, but peace, you have lots of potential energy. You're not in apathy. It can look similar. In apathy, the sense is, what's the point? In peace, it's not a case of I don't care. It's a case of I don't mind. Okay, coronavirus is here. I don't mind, because I know that I can work my way through this. So those are the different emotions, but all I want you to remember is cat, crap, and the line. But let me show you a different way. We all come in different shapes, different sizes, different colors, like these bottles. But the energy inside of us, the emotions inside of us are exactly the same. Anger, when I'm angry, is the same as the anger which Mark wanted to hit me with, or the anger that you feel around anything. As is fear, as is any emotion, the biochemical effect of that emotion is exactly the same in all of us. So, Mark, I'm just going to come out of the presentation because I want to do a demonstration. So let me just come out of this. And let me know whether you can see me back on the screen.
Yep, you're back on.
Okay, so here's this bottle, and most of you will be able to see that there's a few bubbles coming up because it's a bottle of sparkling water. And that represents those bottles that you saw on the surface. Nothing much happening. And then life comes and does that to us. It shakes us up. It throws coronavirus at us. What happens? All this energy starts to flow, but there's a lid on it, which means this energy can't go anywhere. Electricity is absolutely no good if there's resistance in the wire. Your computer isn't going to work, your lights aren't going to work. Actually, most of the stuff in your house isn't going to work because there's a blockage. Electricity needs to flow in order for it to work. The fuel in your car, whether it's petrol, diesel, or electric, needs to flow for it to work. So what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is simply this. When life comes and does this, you do this, and you might just be able to hear this. I'm going to do this slowly because I don't want water all over the place. Can you hear that? It's the energy moving. Emotional intelligence is taking that lid off and keeping it off, and then allowing the energy to flow. Now, unlike this bottle of water, which will eventually go flat, we have a constant source of energy through the food we take, through the sunlight, through all sorts of ways. We have an energy coming into us, and we need to let that energy move just like that. And we can use that energy to reach all of our goals. That's emotional intelligence. You can go and read a few books and a few encyclopedias on emotional intelligence theory, but that's what it boils down to. If you take away nothing else from this, take that away. You have energy inside of you. Are you using it, or are you wasting it, or have you got it bottled up so much that nothing's going to happen with it? So let me just go back to the presentation for a moment. So slideshow. There you go. Can you see the bottles on the screen? Okay, so we are like these bottles of water. Well, what's coronavirus taught us, if nothing else? Shit happens in life. You may be, walking along, everything's working out, and suddenly life throws something at you. In my case, it threw a heart attack at me, and I had to deal with it. It actually saved my life because I decided to face up to it and deal with it. In fact, life is full of surprises because I had 3 heart attacks thrown at me. Shit happens. You can't control that. We think we can control, but there's lots of things we can't control. If you can control it, then fine, control it. There's nothing to worry about if you're in control. But if you can't control it, there's nothing to worry about because worrying about it isn't going to change a damn thing. But you can control if you get out of that situation. You can control how quickly you get out, and how is it that you're going to go forward from this situation. You can fight the fact that we're all in this open prison. I'm in an open prison where I can walk out of this building that I'm in into the courtyard outside, and then there's a set of gates. I can't actually, or I'm not allowed to walk out of those gates because I've got these heart attacks as a history, and they've said stay in. So okay, I'm staying in. So effectively, I'm in an open prison without the benefits of a prison, because I still have to cook my own meals and I still have to do my own cleaning. But that's what it is. Shit happens. Get used to it. So here I am cleaning the toilets the other day, which my cleaner normally does, but I've got to do it. Get used to it. Shit happens. What are you going to do about it? What you can do is get the right tools. If you've got the right toolkit, then you can do what you need to do when things don't work out. So basically, emotional intelligence is very simple. It's like the bottle of water. And what you got to do is decide, are you going to let the energy flow, or are you going to keep your lid on and basically die if the worst comes to the worst? Mark, that's my presentation. So I'll open it up to questions, which I'm sure I've stirred up some people.
Absolutely, including myself. Just going through it, a repeat of the stuff that I already know that you do as well, and it's great. What I will do, if anybody does want to answer questions, I won't put names to who they are. So if you're feeling a bit unsure about whether to ask the question, because you don't want to be identified, obviously there isn't a way of identifying it, but I won't read out the names. I'm happy to keep them anonymous. We have got the original questions. As I say, if anybody's got anything, just add it into the Q&A. But I'll start with going through the predefined questions. But I also just wanted to touch on something. If you could expand a little bit more on, you talked. My interpretation of what you talked about on the end of it was about holding on to things that don't serve you. That was my interpretation. Can you just sort of touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, we go through situations, and if I can kind of use you as an example here, that you had a situation recently where your relationship changed. When relationships change, and it's happened to me, we can hold on to the past of that, how that relationship used to be, and we can hold on to all the stuff from there, or we can take what's positive out of that and put the rest aside. And it's because people don't know how to separate that, how to hold on to the stuff that's useful and put aside the stuff that isn't. So if we hang on to how business used to be, because the reality is it's not the way it used to be, holding on to that stuff of how it used to be is actually wasting your energy. You need to focus on what it is and what you can do now.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so we have had a couple of questions just come in. There is one that says, how, this is pretty much my philosophy, but how do you find the right or new tools, especially when much of the existing ones are irrelevant?
You're doing that already by being on this seminar or whatever you call it. When they're talking about tools, are they talking about tools to help themselves or tools to help their business? How do you find them? You find them by being open, by listening to what's out there. Because as a kind of nation, the British tend to be more skeptical than others. And healthy skepticism is good, but a closed down skepticism is no good, because it'll stop you seeing the things that are useful to you. So be open to new stuff. You may not understand it. It may not make sense. And like you said, Mark, when you first came across this, it was just a bunch of woo-woo. And yet that woo-woo works. I kind of, I was completely closed down to this. I came from a background of education. I was educated, I got the degrees, I got all the qualifications. This stuff was just a, sorry the language, but it was a pile of crap. What was I doing? I want to look at it. I looked at it because my life then turned a corner, and it ended up being a mess. And I knew I had to kind of look where I hadn't looked before, because everywhere I had looked, I hadn't found the answer. So how do you find this? Be open.
I agree, and I would just want to sort of echo the sentiment slightly with my own, because as I said, I've been on 2 of the 3-day retreats, and the first one was very, very powerful for me and enabled me to learn the tools, but there was a gap between the 2. And although I thought the second one was going to be a refresher, I discovered so much more, and it was even more powerful. And obviously you get people coming on them, more regular than I have been, but it's a massive thing to open yourself up to other possibilities. And I think that's another key word, isn't it? What are the possibilities in this? And I think that's something that's certainly resonated with me in the past. Thank you very much. That one's done. Could a business example be given where courage was demonstrated despite fear and being below the line?
Yeah, there are loads of examples of that. So in Simon's case, if I just come back to GreenStones was actually quite successful when I met Simon. But he was in fear that if he stopped working that hard, if he didn't work 7 days a week, he would all stop growing, because actually he was holding it all together. And the courage was realizing that actually he needed to operate in a different way. He needed to trust other people. He needed to allow other people to make mistakes so that the business could actually grow, because they would learn from their mistakes. And the culture that is in GreenStones now is probably very different to the culture that was there when Simon first took it over. From what I've seen, it takes a huge amount of courage to trust people, because in the majority of cases, most employers do not trust their employees to that extent, and that's what holds them back. So it's as simple as that. Another example of a business stepping into courage is people put the whole company in front of me, and then I get them to do crazy, really frightening things. That takes courage. So, and I'm not going to say what it is, but you know what. when you are it takes courage right now to face up to coronavirus. Your business in a place where you never had to think about things the way you're thinking about them now. It takes courage to actually make decisions from this place and to make different decisions to the ones that you made in the past.
Just really quickly before we go on to some of the other questions, there's another aspect for me that is massively key at the moment. You kind of touched on it, but I wanted to use the word that I resonate with, and that's control. So one of the things that you helped me with was having control is better than wanting control, and trying to get control pushes you further away. And one of the things that kind of really is hitting home at the moment is whether we knew this was going on in our own subconscious thoughts beforehand. We had control of our business. We didn't, but we believed we did. And now something outside has come and hit us, which has gone, I don't have control because if my employees have gone home, this is happening, no one's paying me. So the element of feeling out of control, I think is massive right now. And I just wondered if you can sort of touch on a bit of the feeling of wanting control as opposed to having control.
Yeah, what wanting control is that sense of I don't have it. So the premise is I don't have it. Thoughts become things. Whatever you focus on long enough, you create. So if you focus on wanting something, you're going to create a situation whereby you experience wanting it. So we have these big goals, and it's good to get us moving, because that want and that desire starts to get us to take some action. But if taking the actions, we hold on to that wanting, we're going to sabotage those actions, because internally what we're saying is, we can program what our body does. And by focusing on wanting, we're saying to the body, give me an experience of wanting. And the body goes, yeah, okay, I'll give you an experience of wanting. And that's what happens. Having control is completely different, because in having control, you have the thing that in the past you wanted, but you only have it because you let go of the wanting so that you could actually experience the having. So when you focus on having, you create having. And I'm not talking about pretending, act as if, because it's a bit more deeper than that. There's nothing wrong with having anything. There's nothing wrong with having money. But the people who want money, guess what? They're the ones who never have money. The people who have money, they have money because they got away from the wanting. They didn't arrive at, oh, okay, I've got the money now, so I don't want it. The sense of having comes before. And wanting is, if you look at a pendulum, wanting is one side, having is on the other. You can't want and have something at the same time. In order to have, you have to move away from the wanting. So the pendulum has to swing the other way, and it's energetic. I can't explain it to you verbally, but that's the stuff that I deal with in the emotional intelligence tools that I teach, is people move away. And Mark, you've seen this, where people have achieved amazing goals incredibly rapidly, far more rapidly than they thought was possible, because they moved away from wanting to having.
Yeah, I mean, the element of control, I think, in a lot of business owners is absolutely crucial, because that was one of my biggest problems. And once I had identified that, for want of a better phrase, it enabled me to grow the business.
On the events, I do an exercise in, what do you actually have control over? What do you actually have control over? And people realize that actually it's not much. But facing up to that, you start to focus on the few things you can control. And that's what makes the difference.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things we can't control right now is what announcement's going to be made at 5 o'clock each night and how much it's going to change our lives.
I'm not sure even Boris controls that. But...
No, I'm sure he doesn't. No, I'm sure he doesn't. Okay, so we'll go off to the questions. So there's one here. How do I keep calm and not have an outburst when everything is getting on top of you?
Talk to you.
Yeah, possibly.
How do I keep calm and not have an outburst? Well, the only reason you have an outburst is you have got the lid on, and this pressure is piling and piling, and eventually the lid blows off. The lid blowing off is that outburst. So if you want to stop that, you've got to hear the fist. You've got to take the lid off. and keep it off. And then that'll happen. Sometimes that'll be so well, I won't do it now, but sometimes so well, and you'll start frothing at the mouth. It'll feel uncomfortable, but that won't last because you'll learn to keep the energy flowing by keeping the lid off, and that'll stop the outbursts.
A sort of small example for the logical thinkers here, because obviously that's kind of how this thing works, is you start to question everything and try and work it out. So the idea is not to work it out, but in certain situations that is about going into courage. So where you talked about going above the line, that's talking about going into courage and having the conversation with the person that you are, and I'm going to choose my words carefully because I know you'll pick me up on them, is where you are allowing someone to frustrate you, because nobody can frustrate you. That'd be right in your language, wouldn't it? Nobody can frustrate you, or you're allowing them to.
This is you.
Yeah.
You're feeling frustrated. The energy is in you. You created it. Somebody else will come along and shake you, and you'll feel that frustration, but they didn't create it. It was already in you. And when you realize that, you realize that's one thing you do control, and then you can do something about it.
So the idea is to go into courage and actually just have that conversation with somebody. Yeah, okay. Thank you. How do I park the despair and get a good night's sleep?
I'm going to come back to the same thing. You're feeling despair and you're not sleeping because the lid's on. That energy is trying to flow and you're stopping it. When people are in despair, I actually take them into despair, because if they dive into it, it's over and done with very quickly, just like that. It's when they're not dealing with it that they keep on feeling it, because that feeling is trying to get out of you and you're keeping it in. So if despair is trying to get out of you, let it out. You might need to talk to somebody. You might need to have a good old cry, or learn the emotional intelligence tools, and you can let it out safely and quickly. So it's basically, don't keep it in, because that's what's stopping you from sleeping.
Thank you. A really good one, and a word in this particular one that resonates with me. So, I feel lonely all the time. How do I stop needing other people's approval and company?
Send cards to yourself, like a Valentine's card. Joking apart, the feeling of loneliness is really a false kind of idea. We think we're lonely because we're too frightened to actually communicate with people. When we start to communicate, we don't feel lonely, because we realize that it's not just us. It's basically everybody is going through the same thing, regardless of what it is. And loneliness comes because we have this bunker mentality. If we stop talking to other people because we feel we can't, and then we feel alone. Well, yeah, you are alone because you shut yourself off. So one of the keys to loneliness, again, is the ability to communicate, and to communicate intelligently through the emotional intelligence, because there's a lot of communication which isn't intelligent communication.
What about the word approval in there? What's your sort of thoughts on the approval?
It's one of our deepest mental needs. We're born with it. But let me ask you, do you want approval, or would you rather have approval? Because if you want approval, carry on doing what you're doing. If you'd rather have approval, then you need to be courageous enough to let go of the wanting, and then you can allow it to actually come in. So it's a complete paradox. If you want approval, if you want somebody to love you, let go of that. Let go of wanting that. Be courageous enough to say, if I never get this, I'll still be around. I'll still survive. And then you start to see it coming in.
One of the things that's kind of, obviously I'm on my own here, apart from this weekend, you might get to see the kids. They might jump in the background at some point if they get bored on their Xbox or whatever it is they're currently doing. I think it might be Lego, but is one of the things that I gained from the skills and also the current time is that you only live pretty much in your own body. So even if you was in a room of 100 people, you'd still be lonely, because you'd still only be in that situation. Does that make sense?
It's also because all of these feelings we are feeling inside of us. Nobody else is feeling them. They may be feeling their own feelings of loneliness, but they're not feeling our feelings.
Yeah.
So the only way we can change our feeling is to work inside. What we are taught as a society is to work on the outside. But working on the outside still doesn't change the shit inside. So we still feel lonely after all that work.
Brilliant, thank you. Obviously, as with all cases, I think I'm only asking the questions for myself, so it works quite well in both ways. But a public one-to-one coaching session with you, I'm not quite sure that's what I intended. But with meditation, anxieties and worries go away momentarily, but what after that?
Okay. Meditation definitely works, but this is what my teachers taught me. If all you do is meditation, but you don't deal with the crap that's down there in the subconscious, meditation gets you into a good place and you float above the garbage, or you fly above the garbage, but the garbage is still there. So the only way to kind of deal with it is to go in, and meditation gets you into a good place. When you're in a good place, that's the time to actually dive in and deal with the stuff that's down there. Because when you're in a good place, it's far easier to deal with it than when you're in a bad place.
There's a couple of questions on...
Did that answer the question, Mark? Sorry.
Well, I'd need whoever answered it to just confirm, but it did for me. Sorry, yes, it did for me. There is a couple of questions in and around the same subject. I'm trying to collaborate them all together. So there's things like how to stop your mind racing, best way to shut off from it all and get some time to yourself without worrying. So what you've just talked about with meditation, I do a version of meditation, whatever the phrase is, about the breathing. Have you got? Can you kind of go through that with the people? Because there's a few questions around what you've just answered, and also so the breathing exercises or the meditation that I would be doing, I go into what's bothering me as well as doing the rest of it. Are you comfortable with going into that? I think I'm rambling now.
Yeah, I mean, one of the easiest ways to meditate is to just focus on your breath, the in-breath and then the out-breath. So just watch your breathing, and what you're watching out for is initially the point at which the in-breath turns into the out-breath and the out-breath turns into the in-breath. So that it's that point at which it switches. And once you're used to finding out that point, then you're looking for the gap of the switch. And what that does, it's training your mind just to look at one thing, which is that breath. And unconsciously, that energy is already beginning to move in the body because you're breathing in and breathing out. And that can start to release the anxiety without you actually doing anything about it. So one of the tools that we use on our courses is we actually teach some breath work to people, because there are some types of breath work which allow that to happen unconsciously. There are other types of breath work which will stir you up so rapidly that you could finish the session kind of feeling as if you made it worse on there. So it's important to kind of do the right type of breath work initially. There's no right and wrong as such, but there are different types of breath work which will create different things. It's like yoga. If anybody does yoga, there are types of yoga which are very kind of still and restful, and there are types of yoga which are incredibly rigorous. The type you do will dictate how you feel at the end, and it also depends on how you're kind of wired up as well. So it's not as simple answer as to just do this one technique. It's within techniques there are different things to do. So within emotional intelligence, there are things which are quite advanced, which I wouldn't teach early on, because people just don't have the tools to be able to deal with the stuff that could come up. I'm not saying it most of the time it doesn't, but I like to play safely. So I do things whereby I teach people to deal with stuff in a way in which they can handle it. That way they're not dependent on me or anybody else, because they've got the tools to deal with it themselves.
And also it's making sure we don't put the lid back on when we're doing that, isn't it? For the example you used earlier on, because you can breathe and keep a lid on, all that on. The idea is to get it out, and the exhale is to sort of get that stuff out.
If everybody wants an exercise, just start to notice from today and the next few days how many times you just stop breathing, and you'll find out that you hold your breath at all sorts of points when actually you should just be breathing in and out so circular way.
Brilliant, thank you. Got a control question. I feel great, but sometimes need to help my husband and kids feel positive. How can I do this?
Okay, how do you know that they're not positive? We can only see something if it's in us in the first place. So we all have this tendency, including me, in order to go and help somebody, especially if I think they're not feeling particularly good. What I found out very quickly was the best thing we can do for others is to sort our own shit out first and set an example. And as employers or business owners, that's really important, because people will tend to do what we do. And Simon realized this very quickly, and he's not asking anybody to do anything which he's not doing himself. So the best way you can help your husband and kids is first to do it yourself, and they'll notice the change and they'll start to ask you, what are you doing? And then you can teach them. Whereas if you try and impose it on them, most people will resist. And this is the thing about dating, or we're going out and we're looking for a partner, somebody we like, and straight away we're pulling, I want you, I want you. What's the first thing they do? They go, no, get away from me. You try and help somebody who...
I know what you mean.
Yeah, you try and help somebody who isn't quite ready for it, you're going to make it worse. Or you're basically asking to be slapped, and they will slap you.
Brilliant, thank you. Another interesting one. Any advice for looking after children? I'm guessing during this process, but also I guess it's a bigger thing. This is the bit where I nearly punched you, I think, isn't it?
Yes, I remember that one. Yes, there is advice. In terms of emotional intelligence, the younger the children, the more emotionally intelligent they are. They are far more superior to us, because as kids, we learn patterns of manipulation to control the adults around us. Kids are far more emotionally intelligent than you. If you're trying to get them to do something, you're wasting your time, because they'll run rings around you. So the first thing is just leave them alone. Set an example, they'll respect that. But if you try and get them to do something, you're trying to manipulate them, and you're below the line. So below the line, we manipulate. Above the line, we inspire. And be an inspiration that people want to follow, because if you're a manipulator, people will not follow you. They'll just fight you. And kids are absolutely superb. You taught them how to manipulate you, and now you're trying to manipulate them this way. It doesn't work.
They do pick up on it, and I know for a fact, when you got this, as I say, it's, as you said, it's a constant learning thing. But when you have got some of these things, you do notice it, and I notice that when I'm above the line, and the kids are behaving better when I'm above the line. But there's the link is obvious to see.
I think when you came, I used to at that point still have children coming on the courses. And I stopped that because it was the adults who felt uncomfortable, because the teachers got, or rather the children got it far easier than they did. They just found it so much easier than the adults.
Brilliant, thank you. I believe in positive thinking, but due to my age and this impacting on us so close to retirement, i.e. 3 years, I need inspiration. There's a lot of desire words there, isn't there?
Yeah, well, the first thing is let go of believing in positive thinking, because whether you like it or not, you've also got negative thinking, as I have, as everybody has. We have both types of thoughts, and positive thinking is saying, I'm only going to think the positive stuff, but below the level of awareness, all the negative stuff is still happening. So just accept that there is negative stuff. Inspiration it's in the clues in the word. Inspire comes from within you. Inspiration is inside you. You can't get it from outside. You can get motivated from outside, but then as soon as you go off, you get a flat tire and you stop, because motivation only lasts temporarily. Inspiration comes from within you. If you want to be inspired, you need to look within and find somebody who can help you look within, rather than constantly looking outside, because I was one of the people that needed to be motivated all the time. And I was fortunate enough to come across teachers that said, stop doing that, stop looking outside. Let me teach you how to look inside for the answer, because it's already there. So we look in the wrong place for the answer.
Sanjay, just had Lindsay just asked, can we have a recap on the items above and below the red line? Have you got your spreadsheet or your presentation you can put up?
Let me go back to it. So just bear with me whilst
Yeah, carry on.
Got the presentation.
I have just, while Sanjay's doing that, I have just posted, Sanjay, we've got about 8 minutes left, 7 minutes left. So I've posted Sanjay's LinkedIn profile in the chat. Obviously, Sanjay has given up his time today for us. So if you could link with him and do him a recommendation, I'm sure that he'd be delighted to see that. And if you obviously want to learn any more about what Sanjay does and how he can help you and your family, team, whoever it is, then he'll be delighted to talk to you on there.
Nowadays, it won't even cost you the price of a cup of coffee to talk to me. Take advantage of that.
Yeah.
So here are the emotions. So what did Lindsay ask for?
It was just to have a recap on it. So if you could just go through some of the sort of examples.
So the simple thing to remember is the emotions below the line zap us of energy. They are an energy drain. The emotions above the line give us energy. So they have more energy than we need. So the net effect is the higher above the line we go, the less likely we are to use up all that energy by the end of the day. In fact, it's impossible to use up all that energy. So when you're doing something from courage and acceptance, you actually get more energized. Whereas if you're doing something from any of the lower emotions, you get more tired taking the action. So whether you get tired or energized is a good clue as to whether you're above or below the line on there. And all you need to remember is cap and crap. You don't need to remember the individual names of the emotions at this stage. That's useful once you've got the tools and you're using them. But everybody has an intuitive sense. If I said to you, or if I asked you now, are you above the line or below the line? Everybody intuitively knows where they are. And it's listening to that intuition and then doing what you need to do to get above the line. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah, Lindsay said she understands it, just couldn't remember the individual items. Lindsay, if you drop me a note after this, I can get you the copy of that for you to have a look at. There is just another couple of questions. I'd say we've only got 5 minutes left, so if anybody has got any other questions, obviously pop them in the Q&A. I've got another couple here. Where is it? When things get back to normal, the social anxiety will be massive. Any tips on how to mitigate this?
One, I don't think things are going to get back to what we regarded as normal, but yes, social anxiety is going to increase because we've been forced into this isolation, and now we're going to come out of it, and people are going to be scared to meet other people. So how do you mitigate it? Well, first and foremost, you need to make sure that you let go of wanting the need to be around people, the need to really connect with people. I used to be really shy and introverted and shut off in my room with my books around me, and I didn't have any friends. Guess why? Because I was shut away with the books, and I had to start to go out. And initially, that was hell because I didn't have any of the emotional intelligence tools either. What I discovered through this is when I first started, I used to go to these mind-body fairs in order to promote myself. And I used to have a stall and nobody came there. And in the end, I got bored. So one day, being bored, I had an inspired idea, which was I'll just sit there and apply the emotional intelligence skills. And I got myself above the line, and people started to come and talk to me. And I wasn't doing anything different other than being myself. So if you want to mitigate that fear of loneliness, learn to be yourself and be okay with being yourself, because the people that are like you, that also like you, they'll come and talk to you. But if you try and connect with them, it's coming from wanting, and you'll push them away.
Excellent, thank you. And I think
there's probably a longer answer to that, but I don't think we've got time to go into all of that.
no, I think it's a touch on it. And as I say, if people want any further, they know that they're more than happy. You're more than happy for them to
people connect with him. I'm happy to have a chat with them. I haven't got much more else to do right now. So.
Okay, so we'll go with the last one, which I like this one a lot, actually, in the way that it's worded. So always look on the, have we done this one? Always look on the bright side is wearing a bit thin for some. So what next?
That means they're not looking on the bright side, obviously, if it's wearing thin. It's not about always look on the bright side. It's also admitting that actually there is a dark side at the moment. I personally, I don't like the people that are always kind of saying everything's rosy, because it's not rosy. You need shit for the roses to grow in the garden. And right now we've got it. Are we going to grow from it, or are we going to just stink of it? That's a choice.
I mean, the biggest thing for me out of all of this is probably just we are where we are, and whilst it's not as easy as I'm going to say, we just have to accept and then work out what it is that we can do to make it better.
And right now there isn't a bright side. There's loads of things happening out there. There's people dying. There's the NHS struggling. There's people who are trying to save you also dying because they're catching the disease.
Yeah, people are serving you food.
Yeah,
shops at the shops. Yeah.
So you can't say that everything's bright and rosy.
No. Okay. Well, I make that pretty much damn on. Unless anybody has got any other questions, I think we're pretty much ready to close it off. So I wanted just to say again, thank you very much, Sanjay, for joining us. It's a massive part of what's going on at the moment, the mental well-being. Obviously, even before this, it was becoming a bigger picture. The best advice I can give really is to, I'm at the end of the phone or the email or LinkedIn, whatever it is. If somebody wants to chat, I don't know this stuff as well as Sanjay, but I'm more than willing to have a chat with somebody. There was a question, I think, about staying connected with people. There's lots out there at the moment. Just make sure that you do. I think I'm making sure that I have at least one call with people a night, and actually use the technology that's there, be able to see them, because whilst you can't touch them and hug them and all the rest of it, being able to see people is a massive thing. So from all of us, I think, thank you very much, Sanjay.
From me, I am also running free events for my community, where it's like a drop-in event, and a lot of my kind of people that I'm working with or have worked with in the past come along to that just to ask questions. If any of you want to take part, then connect with me. Just let me know that you met me on this webinar, and I'll put you onto that, or I'll make sure that you get an invite to one of those events so that you can come and kind of participate in those as well.
Brilliant. And we've had some thank you. So Mark says, thank you, very good. Guy says, thank you both for sharing. And Melanie says, thank you, Mark and Sanjay, very helpful. We've even got some hearts in the eyes as well. So we must have done something good. Brilliant. So thank you very much, everybody. As I say, if there is anything else, we're always at the end of a phone, or get Sanjay's LinkedIn details. I'll post it again. You'll get an email with the recording, hopefully, as long as I've managed the technology right, which based on my background, I hope I have. Have a great day and a great weekend. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers, Sanjay.
Bye.